All right, let's talk about tight ends. Let's talk about tight ends, specifically first round tight ends, and if there should be more or less of them. Should you be drafting a tight end in the first round? This has become a narrative I've seen bubble up, and so I wanted to kind of do my own research on this. As you have Brock Bowers, largely considered to be one of the better tight end prospects we've seen in a minute. Kind of him and Kyle Pitts have been the two generational prospects we've seen this generation, which doesn't really make sense, but you get what I'm saying here. And just in general, I think with Kyle Pitts maybe being a little disappointing, not necessarily bad, but disappointing, I think people are wondering, is it worth drafting a tight end in round one? Well, I wanted to kind of, run a study on it and see if it is or isn't. So what I did was I went back and looked at a lot of first, second, and third round tight ends, and I gave each one a score. Score on 1 to 4, 1 being you're basically a bust, 4 being you're great, 3 being you're good, and 2 being like, you added some value, but you weren't a bust, but you weren't really good either. That's the scoring system, and I wanted to see, well, what score did each rounder get in this situation? So this is the scores for rounds 1, 2, and 3. You definitely see, if you're not drafting a tight end rounds 1 or 2, you're probably not getting a great tight end. Round 3, and that's just round 3, not round 3 and on. There's a huge drop off there. But the score in first rounders and second rounders, that is not a big drop off whatsoever. That's actually pretty close. So, to the argument of should you draft a tight end in the first round, there's actually some validity to the idea that maybe you shouldn't. While it is true you're more likely to get a better tight end if you draft one in the first round, it's not as big of a jump as other positions, and it might be worth it to, if you need a tight end and a, offensive lineman, for example, maybe it's the better idea to draft the offensive lineman in round 1 and a tight end in round 2 than the other way around. Although this list could be a little bit of a counter to that. So these are the all the tight ends that were drafted first in their draft class. These are in the past 10 years, the guys who were drafted first in their draft class. And I have to say, it's a pretty good list of tight ends. It is. There's maybe not a lot of, you could argue how many of these guys ended up being elite. Again, Kyle Pitts, really good, but has he lived up to the hype? I don't know. But he's good. He's a good tight end. Kincaid was really good last year. Trey McBride's been awesome. Cole Kmet and TJ Hawkinson are really good. Even got Hayden Hurst and OJ Howard both showed flashes. Same thing with Hunter Henry. Max Williams is a really good blocking tight end, and Eric Ebron was, I believe, a Pro Bowler. He was a good player. So usually if you're drafting a guy first in the draft class, they actually are most likely to be the best guy in the draft class. That's something I looked at in the past 10 years. Usually, not always. Mark Andrews wasn't drafted first. He's debatably better than any of these guys. Sam Laporta wasn't drafted first. He was better than Dalton Kincaid. But you're very likely to get a good tight end if you draft the first tight end available. And again, not all these guys were first round picks. Trey McBride was a second round pick, but still, I think that it is worth mentioning that usually it might still actually be an okay idea if there's in a situation like this draft class, for example, if you really want a tight end like Brock Bowers, it might still not be a bad idea to draft him first overall, given that situation, because a lot of times the tight end drafted first in that draft class still does end up being very good. And it is worth mentioning as well, weirdly, there was actually a little bit more of great tight ends in round 2 than in round 1. A little bit more, not crazy, but a little bit more. But the kind of the floor of first round tight ends was higher. Usually, it was very rare for a first round tight end to be just a complete bust. While there were some that were, maybe not great and didn't live up to the hype, the busts seemed to be pretty rare. Whereas for second round picks and third round picks, the bust is very high. There's plenty of bust in the mix there. Again, shouldn't say very high, but there's a lot more in second round and third round. It's the most likely outcome is a bust there. So yeah, I guess that's it. Kind of a shorter video than I usually make, but I don't really have too much to add, so I won't waste your time just to get 8 minutes and get more monetization. I'll end it now. That's what I think about all this. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.